Thank you, Susan. Well, that will be the last time we see me on stage. Don't worry, that's already, you will not get fed up. So let me first call on stage the three panelists for this interesting session. Neil Rogers, Dr. Yasemin Biro Kirtman, and Stefano Ravelli. So let me briefly introduce them to you. Neil has over 35 years of experience in tourism, conservation, sustainable tourist development. His consulting focuses on nature-based tourism, sustainable destination development, and business mentoring with speaking engagement in various international conferences like today. Dr. Yasemin Biro Kirtman is environmental economist. She serves as a senior advisor to the Global Environmental Facility in Washington, D.C. She has been working in international sustainable development for the last 20 years, and we are proud to have her on our GSTC board now since the last year. And last but not least, Stefano Ravelli, Director of Valsugana Tourist Board. He has been working for governance and development of destination for over 20 years. You know, Valsugana, you will know about these beautiful destinations. I'm Italian, I've been there before, and I hope you will appreciate it as well. And she had first set up the first Italian working group for industry, and also the GSTC Italy working group. Good, so welcome, three of you. I will only say a few words because they know much better than me on the topic of the panel. But I'm not sure that every one of you knows, the terminology of the title of this panel, Nature Positive and Rewilding. So just briefly, Nature Positive is a global society goal defined as halt and reverse nature loss by 2030 on a 2020 baseline and achieve full recovery by 2050. To put this more simply, ensuring more nature in the world in 2030 than in 2020. And this was an initiative launched last year, I think it's September 23. And basically at the region of there were some of the largest conservation organizations like the IUCN, WWF, etc. And Rewilding is a conservation strategy that aims to restore ecosystems to their natural state by reintroducing native species and removing non-native ones. And in the context of tourism, Rewilding can offer unique experiences for travelers who are interested in exploring nature and wildlife. In my view, there is a strong connection with the concept of regenerative tourism, which I think a concept that also was launched a few years ago. And the idea is that tourists should not only conserve what is in there, but to a certain extent have a positive elements that help regenerate in the term of regenerative tourism, not only naturally, but also socially a destination. So without further ado, I will ask then Neil to start introducing this topic. Neil, as you will see, is an expert, has been working in particular in Europe on this topic. So I leave you the floor, Neil.
Okay. Thank you, Luigi. Good morning, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to thank Luigi, Randy, and the GSTC for giving rewilding and nature-positive travel such a prominence on day one of the conference. And in order to give you a better idea about rewilding, I just want to kick off this session with a short video.
When we inherited the estate, the first thing your father said was, "You'll never make a go of farming on that land. It doesn't work. It's a virtual biological desert."
There wasn't much option other than a completely different direction.
We were going to tear down the fences, rip it all up, and put all our trust in nature.
It was a hugely radical way of thinking. It's never been done before.
Could this motley collection of animals transform the land that has been depleted? Hello? The outrage it caused amongst locals, the clock was ticking. We needed to see that something really was going to happen. Suddenly, it began to feel totally different.
Everything started to turn.
The Earth coming to life.
It was just extraordinary.
The whole landscape was breathing a sigh of relief. You could hear it. Isn't that amazing? It's the stuff of fairy tales. As soon as the conditions are right, these species will find you somehow. So then miracles start to happen.
Okay. Thank you. My name's Neil Rogers, and over the last 3 years, I've been advising Rewilding Europe on strategic planning and scaling up tourism supply chains across their rewilding landscapes. The dual crisis of climate change and biodiversity loss threatens to change our world forever, but there is hope. If we turn into action and protect 30% of the planet's oceans, lands and fresh waters by 2030, people and nature can thrive together into the future. Rewilding has a key role to play and is primarily about restoring and creating biodiversity. The added benefit of carbon sequestration has always been a secondary but very important outcome. Large-scale restoration of habitats, including forests, peatlands, grasslands and seabeds, offers opportunities to tackle the twin crisis of biodiversity loss and climate change together. Rewilding helps to transform landscapes, places and communities. It elevates health and well-being for residents and offers attractive biodiverse destinations for tourism. Today, I will briefly touch on a few rewilding case studies that illustrate how tourism can support habitat restoration and rewilding. So, what is rewilding? Luigi touched upon it, but rewilding is a progressive approach to conservation. It's about letting nature take care of itself, enabling natural processes to shape land and sea, repair damaged ecosystems, and restore degraded landscapes. Rewilding Europe has 10 rewilding landscapes currently in Europe, with plans to expand to 15 landscapes over the next few years. Tourism in rewilding landscapes is community-based and part of building nature-based economies. It reconnects visitors to nature, contributes directly and indirectly to the rewilding mission whilst building new pride and identity in landscape communities. By initiating the comeback of numerous wildlife species and working hand in hand with local and indigenous communities, rewilding is restoring healthy ecosystems. And rewilding is happening now on a global scale. Growing interest and curiosity worldwide for rewilding nature offers hope and optimism for the future. The Global Rewilding Alliance has 177 partner organizations in 123 countries, rewilding over 2 million hectares of land. The European Rewilding Network has 92 initiatives in 29 European countries, with 5 million hectares of land currently being rewilded. And in Britain, Rewilding Britain has 974 member projects rewilding 170,000 hectares of land and 506 square kilometers of seabed. The World Travel and Tourism Council's Nature Positive Travel and Tourism Report of 2022 highlights both the importance of nature to tourism and how collective action is needed to protect and restore biodiversity. The nature-positive approach to tourism brings the tourism sector, destinations and communities together, with the report highlighting nature-based opportunities along with practical recommendations. My work with Rewilding Europe over the last few years has highlighted a gap in the knowledge of technical and funding support that is available, and the lack of collaboration between actors, especially between destinations and the conservation and rewilding sector. And there's no doubt that there's a significant opportunity to bring sustainable destinations and rewilding together, share knowledge on biodiversity and restoration, and scaling up nature-based tourism opportunities connected to changing land use practices. By putting nature at the heart of the green recovery, we can drive locally led economic regeneration in a way that is good for nature, climate, and people. So how does nature-positive approach actually work in practice? The graphic on the right of the screen shows the nature-positive approach of UK-based Exodus Travels that links rewilding and ecosystem restoration with key sustainability practices and commitments. Exodus adopts the restore, reduce and remove model recommended in the WTCC's report and have partnered with Rewilding Europe, pledging to rewild 100 square meters of land in 5 Bear Smart rewilding corridors for every client that books a trip with them. This should equate to 5,000 hectares of wildlife corridor over a 5-year period. Also in the UK, adventure travel specialist Explore has a similar agreement in place with Rewilding Britain. To reach net positive by 2030, there needs to be more wild nature in the world than there was in 2020, and recovery after that. As you saw in the video that I just showed, Charlie Burrell took over the 3,500-acre Knepp estate in the UK. It's actually very close to Gatwick Airport, just an hour and a half from the centre of London, from his grandparents in 1983. And for 17 years, he tried to make the farm profitable, but it was impossible to compete with larger industrial farms on better soils. In February 2000, the decision was made to stop dairy and arable farming and turn to restoring and rewilding the estate into a landscape of dynamic wood pasture characterized by large areas of grazed savanna and thorny scrub with groves of open trees. Through rewilding, Knepp has experienced an extraordinary revival of nationally rare and endangered species, which makes it a magnet for wildlife watchers and nature lovers. And the estate is now profitable, employing 50 staff rather than the 20 staff that it did under traditional farming. In 2021, Rewilding Britain analysed 33 rewilding projects in the UK, and over the last 10 years, rewilding led to a 54% increase in jobs and 13-fold increase in volunteering positions. Key income sources for the Knepp estate driven by rewilding are a range of rental cottages, glamping accommodations, camping, wildlife safaris, rewilding workshops, conference and wedding venues, a wilding kitchen and shop, as well as producing 75 tonnes per annum of high-value, free-roaming, slow-grown, wild organic meat from the herds of Old English Longhorn cattle, Tamworth pigs, and red and fallow deer. Rewilding Europe also works both reintroducing species and coexistence with endangered ones. Once vast herds of European bison roamed Europe, but were driven to the edge of extinction through hunting and habitat loss. The last European wild bison was shot in the Caucasus in 1927. At that time, there were less than 60 captive bisons in zoos and private parks. Since 2013, Rewilding Europe and WWF Romania have been working together to reintroduce this iconic species back into the 3 million hectare Southern Carpathian rewilding landscape. There are currently 145 bison roaming free throughout the landscape. Iconic species reintroductions help positively transform landscapes and the communities that live in them. Ecotourism at the bison reintroduction site of Arminis is booming, with a range of bison viewing experiences along with the new We Wilder campus, accommodations and visitors centre established by WWF Romania and part funded by Rewilding Europe Capital. In the central Pennines of Italy, Rewilding Europe is working with local partners to develop 5 Bear Smart coexistence corridors, connecting local communities and the local economy with wilder nature. The corridors pass through often overlooked communities and municipalities that link regional and national parks. This spreads visitation and revenues in the central Pennines rewilding landscape. The Marsican brown bear is endemic to the region, with just 50 to 60 individuals left in the wild. Ecotourism and local pride is built around coexistence and conserving this iconic species so the bears can expand their territory with the help of bear smart corridors and communities. Protected areas are the backbone of European nature conservation, with more than 120,000 sites designated across 52 countries. Europe accounts for more such areas than anywhere else in the world. Yet simply protecting the nature currently within them isn't enough. The rewilding of protected areas in Europe could take nature recovery to the next level. An exciting partnership between Rewilding Europe and the Europark Federation will help to create the enabling conditions for wilder nature, delivering essential benefits for the local people, biodiversity and climate. There are a wide range of rewilding measures that Europe's protected areas can employ to create the right conditions for nature recovery. These include strict protection of remaining old-growth forests, allowing forests to naturally regenerate, removing dams and restoring natural water regimes, enhancing natural grazing, leaving carcasses in nature, improving connectivity between protected areas, and the reintroduction of keystone species. There are currently 1.2 million dams and obstacles on European rivers, 150,000 of which are obsolete, causing habitat degradation and biodiversity loss. Finally, I encourage you to embrace restoring biodiversity and rewilding nature and put it at the heart of your business model and value chain, along with sustainability. If you don't believe in the importance of rewilding, then please read the message from Mr. Nature himself, Sir David Attenborough. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. I think we'll have questions and answer after the introductions from Moderator speakers. I remind you that the Slido competition started right now. There is a training-free course, I think, for the one who is most active. So I invite you to pose your questions, and as I said, we'll have first the three introductions, and then we'll start our debate. So Yasemin, you have the floor.
Hi, everybody. So nice to be here. Many thanks to GSTC for including me in this panel. You just heard kind of an overview of what's happening in nature-positive development and rewilding in Europe, and I'll try to provide you a global perspective from the perspective of the Global Environment Facility where I work, which is an international partnership and a multilateral fund that supports sustainable development and nature conservation around the world. And of course, sustainable development includes tourism development. I just want to give you a quick overview of what the Global Environment Facility is and does. As you can see, it's an international partnership of countries, of agencies, of different institutions all over the globe with the intention of safeguarding the global environment. And it is also a financial mechanism of several multilateral environmental conventions, such as the Climate Change Convention or Biodiversity Convention, trying to protect the global environment. And what we do is we take funding from donor countries, put it in a pot, and then we allocate these funds across developing countries so that developing countries can comply with these global environmental agreements. And in addition to that, the way we allocate the funds is project and program based, and we act as a catalyst. We bring together innovators, we bring together private investors, government officials, both national and at local levels, trying to put together projects and programs that will collectively together in an integrated fashion help conserve nature or combat climate change or support forest conservation or sustainable development in developing countries. So what is the purpose of the GEF? I already went through this. It's really to safeguard the global environment. And so far, we have been able to allocate $24 billion in grants around the world in the 30 years that we've been around. So Jeff was established in 1991, right before the Rio Earth Summit. And this grant money has raised $138 billion in co-financing, which means we were able to bring in investment from governments and private sector into the projects that we have decided to finance. And this has happened in 5,700 plus projects around the world in 140 plus countries. And you can see that the Jeff Trust Fund gets replenished every 4 years, and every 4 years there is a strategy that gets updated that directs how these funds are going to be used in those 4 years in each replenishment. And the last replenishment is Jeff 8, which was approved in 2022, and it will last the next 4 years. So we are in Jeff 8 right now, and we are spending these funds in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which all the governments around the world have endorsed, and also in line with nature-positive approach that Luigi described to us just a few minutes ago. So what do we want to do in this replenishment period for the Global Environment Facility? What are we financing? We are financing projects and programs to halt nature loss and ensure that the world is nature positive by 2030 and carbon neutral and pollution free by 2050. So that's a pretty lofty goal, very ambitious, but we think that it's better to be ambitious than not, and we're trying to work with our partners to develop programs and projects that would target these goals. And why are we focused on nature positive? You know, and Luigi actually talked about that, basically it's because of biodiversity loss, which is threatening human well-being by destroying ecosystems on which we depend. It's because oceans that are under the threat of climate change, the warming of the oceans that is associated with acidification, loss of corals, loss of different species, and of course overfishing and pollution. We have freshwater systems being depleted, we have forest loss, etc. And of course hazardous chemicals in our environment that is threatening public health. So in these areas, we have integrated programs in focal areas, different focal areas, biodiversity, climate change, land degradation, and integrated programs that try to address all of these issues in packages. And one of the packages that I highlighted here for you is Net Zero Nature Positive Accelerator. And that includes a lot of tourism development concepts. And in fact, it's restoration of ecosystems that have been damaged. It's different species conservation, wildlife populations around the world. Could it be rewilding, but also protecting the wildlife that's actually existing in different protected areas right now. Restoring forests, sustainable forestry and green recovery and secure livelihoods in areas that are under threat. And we have the Net Zero Nature Positive Accelerator, which is working with the private sector in mobilizing financing for nature positive net zero pathways to invest in nature. And here's a list of our projects if you want to talk about specific investments, what's happening around the world. And as you can see, it's across the world. This is just a tiny portion of the project portfolio right now that's under implementation. And as you can see, from Thailand to Venezuela, we have a number of solutions that we're investing in. In some areas, it's really to protect a certain type of species that's endangered or threatened. In other areas, it's to restore ecosystems that have been degraded and turning them into nature conservation areas or national parks, working with local communities or local governments or private companies to turn them into sustainable tourism development areas. In some areas, we're working on marine protected areas. In some areas, we're working on mountain protected areas, so it depends on where you are. But I just wanted to show you a very wide range of investments. And I am happy to provide more information. There's a lot to talk about if you're interested. But I just want to emphasize the fact that we try to work with different local stakeholders, which I think in nature positive sustainable development is very critical, working with the local communities, the indigenous communities that actually live in those areas, that they have a say in how the sustainable development plans or sustainable tourism development plans should be developed, and also working with civil society organizations that are active in these areas, where, of course, these are very much in line with GSTC criteria that you will be talking about during this conference. Which of course will also respect gender equity in these areas, given women's role in local development, and also the private sector. Nature positive development will only happen if private sector, private investors participate and work together with local governments and local communities. And we think that working with the private sector as an agent for transformation, getting them to move out of the box and change their business as usual practices to think of what else could be done, what alternatively could be done, I think is going to be critical, and we try to finance that in our projects as well. We try to integrate engagement of the private sector in a more constructive way, in a more innovative way in our project. So thank you so much. This was a lot of information in one go, but I hope it gave you an idea as to what we do. But I'm, of course, here and happy to chat if anybody has any more questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Yasemin. And last but not least, Stefano, please, you have the floor.
Hi to everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I feel like home, no matter of the weather, because it was snowing when we left from the Dolomites from Italy. So I'm here to talk about, from a different point of view of our point of view of as a small tourist board. We represent a small tourist board in the north of Italy, in the Alps, and in the last year, we have been working a lot on this issue of sustainability, and I have to say that we changed a lot our mindset toward our approach, and it keeps on changing. And every time that I think we reach a goal, it seems that we have to start the process again, and it's never ending. And so we consider DMOs as a steward of the territory, and we focused in the last year, instead of bringing more tourists to come to our area, we start investing on our residents to increase their awareness of what is happening to us. I consider myself a bit Swedish because we live in the woods, and we had this massive windstorm in 2018, and in less than an hour we lost 41,000 hectares of forest. That I think will take more than 100 years to recover, and it's I'm sad. I have no places to go mushroom seeking or either to run in the middle of the woods, and only if you live there you can appreciate that, and you really think that you have to do something to become more natural positive. And I will bring to you some small examples in these 3 minutes left of what we have done to translate into action what sometimes we keep on talking about and having and behaving in a better way, but at the end we always follow the most convenient way, I think. And so it has to be, we have to change our commitment to this issue if we want to tackle, and we have to do it together, and I'm really pleased to be here for this reason. And to restore the landscape, as we've seen in the picture before, and we as destination work together with industries, and there was a commitment with local industry that invested in replanting the forest, and I was really surprised how many tourists took part in it. And they were really proud to be, they wanted to be part of it. So even if sometimes it appears that we don't care about what is happening next door, but at the end we are becoming more conscious about that. Another nice example, and we use cows to restore our landscape. Sustainability is also economic sustainability, and bringing the cows up in the high plateau is not more convenient, because all of us want to buy good cheese, proper cheese, but at the end when we go to the supermarket, we tend to save money and buy industrial cheese. So we established this project a few years back, and it's a great success, I would say, because we managed to bring local people to go up again to the mountains and to be proud of what our tradition is, so cultural sustainability. And plus, we had a huge involvement of tourists going up there and seeing how we used to work 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and we're still doing the same way in these cow sheds that have been 15 years ago, maybe they were just abandoned because it was not more economic sustainable. And last year, we adopted almost 3,000 cows, and that means 300,000 euros that went into these people that are still doing that job. And it is also a tourist attraction. And tourists are the first one to be they have an advocacy to promote this project, and we are also saving money in doing our job of promoting the destination because the tourists are doing it. This is a museum. It's a museum. Last year we sold about 100,000 tickets. €9 for one ticket to go into a woods and to explore this land art exposition, the contemporary mountain. And even this is incredible because we do not have infrastructure beside the woods. And we do loads of coaching with residents to make them understand how lucky we are and how proud we should be to promote this area. And we try to focus and to engage them to be our ambassador of our territory. But you know what happens sometimes? That the first one that believe in this project are the tourists, and they want to be part of it. But, and I'm really proud to announce it, but last year we also did this, is working together with other destinations that has been certified, and also with the industry that have been certified. And I think only if we work together, we can tackle this issue, and we will be able to become more natural, positive. And what we are doing now, we are always looking for new adventure and the possibility of working with other destinations, other challenging. We need to reach more goals together, and we candidate ourselves in, for example, this issue of Go Nature Positive, where our destination is a good example of what you can do. But I imagine, and my expectation of these 2 days is also getting to know you, and so that we can share experience. And my last, this is also what we have been doing with our forest that has been destroyed, and now is also becoming a land, an exhibition made by a local artist by using the woods that was found and recollected in the same area that has been destroyed by the Vaja storm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefano. We're getting a lot of good questions, and I think they will appear on the screen in a little while. But let me start. There are 2 or 3, in fact, the one that receive more support that are a link to the issue of the relation between rewilding and community. I will read the question as they were phrased by Willie Legrand. There are various cases of tourist demands for nature and park expansion leading to eviction and major community disruptions. What are the recommendations? And from Spiridon Kagas, how do you handle community resistance in rewilding? And there was a third one, I think, by Claudia Giolitti. To what extent is rewilding not a threat for tourist development? How is the ecosystem balance among wildlife, local community, and tourist assured? It's a question to ask to any of you. I would say it's the broader questions. I mean, and it's all, I would say, the GSTC mantra. How we do combine not only the nature and environmental aspect, but with a lot of the other 4 pillars of sustainability. In this case, specifically the issue of community. I think, Stefano, you referred somehow already to the involvement of the community. But any of you would like to start in response to this question? Neil, please.
I could just give a little response, is that the way that Rewilding Europe works with restoration of habitats and communities is very similar to the way that GSTC actually works with destination criteria. Firstly, nothing happens in a landscape without speaking to the municipality first. There has to be funding in place, both from Rewilding Europe and a commitment from the municipality. At all stages, especially at the beginning of the process, the stakeholders in the community are asked for their input. Rewilding cannot take place without the blessing of the community itself. And that's an ongoing process. Rewilding Europe has rewilding offices embedded in the community. Where possible, we have rewilding centres at the hub of the community, not on the edge of a national park or anything, but at the actual hub of the community, where members of the public can come in and speak to the staff every day. We have an enterprise officer in there that talks to people who are interested in nature-based economies, not just tourism, but a range of nature-based enterprises and opportunities, which helps with business planning and financing for them. You know, communities are at the hub of rewilding and restoring landscapes. We can't do it without them. We can't do it without their support. So they are the focus of every rewilding project that Rewilding Europe certainly offers.
Good. And so there's another question, which I think is linked to that, but more on the positive side, that says let me see, there was something about involving the local community in these projects and on other actions. I think you already mentioned something, but you would like to elaborate a bit more about involvement, either the communities or the tourists in the projects that you are promoting in Valsugana?
At the beginning, I think it's difficult to think as a DMO how you can involve the tourist in this process. But it's definitely much easier than what you can think, because all tourists want to be part of it, and sometimes they're even more proud of what the residents are thinking of, for example, Artesella, the contemporary art, because they see it from a different perspective. Instead, in a way, sometimes the residents are spoiled of living in a lucky destination, and I think the advice that I will give to all of you and that I will follow is always try to engage tourists to be part of it, and even from abroad, like with the project Wow Nature, where you can restore the forest that has been damaged by the Vaya storm. There are people that are giving, it's a crowdfunding project where people are bringing in money from all over the world, but there's a company that is actually taking care of this procedure in a professional way. And we found the support of local industry that are also putting money in, and it's a winning system. You keep on putting more money in it, and then you restore the first area, and then you start moving to another, and you build up your confidence, and you realize that you were not just lucky, but it was a good idea, and you bring more confidence, and you are more open to start sharing these experience with all the rest of us, and maybe to have the destination to be a destination that can exploit new experiences and try something different.
Good, thanks. quick question to Yasemin, and then I have a more larger question to all of you. Does the GEF funds can be received by NGOs? So what is the structure? Needs to be a government receiving the funds, or can also an NGO receive the funds, or how is the structure for the implementation of your projects?
Great, thank you. We have different mechanisms by which we allocate the funds. So larger projects definitely need to be received by governments, and through the governments they can be allocated to NGOs. However, we do have a small grants window where the counterpart is directly NGOs. That's only up to $50,000, so local communities, indigenous peoples, or NGOs can apply directly for those funds. But we do have, for example, NGOs which are agencies of the GEF, WWF, UN's, IUCN, Conservation International. Those are NGOs, they're global NGOs, and through them, also NGOs receive funding from the GEF.
Great. Now, a question that also got a lot of supporters from Rachel McCafferty. Most rewilding locations are not easily accessible by public transport. How can we get tourists to these sites without generating excessive CO2 emissions?
Yeah.
Would you like to start, Neil?
I would, yeah. It's one of the questions that we've actually been struggling with, or Rewilding has been struggling with. We've actually changed the whole strategy of how we look at tourism because of this issue. Like most rural tourism models, access is a key element. We really want to have no flight travel, so tourism via train and intermodal transport is a focus. But even in the local destination, it's hard moving people from a small town to the actual product itself. So we've moved in a way from looking at trying to run small group tourism to having to focus a little bit more on independent travel. And that also has changed the model in the way that most rewilding landscapes, or a number of the most successful ones for rewilding Europe, are less than 2 hours away from major cities. So Rome, Madrid, Porto, Edinburgh, for example, are all within 2 hours of the destination, which makes it easier. And so the focus becomes more on national and regional tourism rather than international tourism. Most of the businesses within the landscapes are micro businesses or small, medium-sized enterprises. So we're not looking at capacity here, a large capacity here. We're just looking to support the stakeholders within the community, and we feel that we can do that mostly through local markets. There are adventurous travelers, of course, who can find their way to the destination, but we feel that at the beginning of the process, at least, there's sufficient market locally and regionally to avoid air travel.
Good. And Stefano, I think there was an example, I don't know whether Valsugana was involved, but I think at the time, but in the Alps, I think there was a bidding for, I think, the winter sports, and I think there was a big project on promoting electrical transportation within the different valleys, etc. It doesn't really enter into the rewilding concept, but I think is also a thought that I think in your area, in your region, has been very much in the agenda, right?
Yeah, Trentino region is really keen on this issue, and just yesterday, other 3 destinations in Trentino has been certified, so now we are in good company, and I'm happy that I consider myself to push my friends to work on this issue. And yes, we were working a lot on hydrogen mobility, but it's a bit complex, and we are working a lot now on mobility on train that are connecting all the different areas and valleys in Trentino. So we are always keen on that, and what we have been doing in the last events, big events, is also always trying to, as Randy was telling me, for trying to find out how much carbon we are producing and how we can compensate that. And with this Vaya storm, we have loads of territory that we can where we can replant, and also IKEA has been a sponsor of one of these destinations in occasion of an international sports event.
Yeah, good. Another question again from Willie Legrand. I think that's really relevant to our conference. How do you see sustainable tourist certification driving biodiversity understanding and impact mitigations? Are certification currently driving enough change? It's a tough question.
Did you want me to answer that one?
Please.
Okay. Obviously, as projects move forward and there are more and more stakeholders involved, you start to look about the sustainability of the destination. And when you've got really micro enterprises, maybe 1 or 2 people working in the company, or most of the companies being under 5 individuals with very little knowledge about tourism and how it works on an international scale, it's very hard to start thinking about how you're going to bring certification into the system. How, for example, Rewilding Europe is beginning to look at this, is looking at other models that are already in place. Europarks Federation uses a basic pledge model, so anybody who participates in tourism and gets exposure through Europarks Federation has to adhere to a pledge, and Rewilding Europe has a rewilding pledge that all businesses who work collectively together in a rewilding landscape has to agree to that pledge. But Europark Federation also has a commitment along with the pledge to work on basic sustainability criteria, and it was obviously very interesting looking about a simplified version of destination or industry criteria so that we could ease smaller companies into the certification system, because I think this is very, very needed. To suddenly hit them with a huge amount of criteria that they have to conform to when they've never dealt with anything previously is quite difficult. But if you could hone that down to a 9 or 10 criteria to start with, of which they can build upon, I think is a good way to look at it. And it's hard to convince large conservation organizations to start imposing certification systems on the stakeholders in their landscape, because the last thing they want to do is alienate the community by putting pressure on them to conform. So I think doing it in the right way and easing it in over a period of time is a good way of looking at it.
Good, thanks. Now, moderator's question to Yasemin. We're talking a lot mostly about Europe, Northern Europe, but what about developing countries? What kind of issues you are dealing when funding this kind of project for developing countries? I guess that you have different problematics. It's not maybe just space that maybe there is enough, but it is rather more structural issues. Can you tell us a bit about that?
It's very true, Luigi. In developing countries, there is definitely a lack of infrastructure, but also there's a lack of infrastructure in terms of policies and legislation, and there's a cacophony of policies as well. So there's a lack of coordination across the different functions in governments. So, you know, different ministries doing different things, saying different things about the same issue, for the example of tourism development or nature conservation, for example. So what we try to do is promote policy coherence. In GEF projects, the idea is how can we bring the different groups together to talk to each other and to create a coordinated action in the field, which is not easy, but it can be done if you provide technical assistance, if you provide knowledge exchange, technology transfer in certain areas, in certain cases, and also promote policy enhancements, both at the national but also at the local levels. One of the key ingredients is local community involvement, and not just on paper, but actually in practice, that is a requirement for GEF projects, for example, that local communities be consulted at design stages of any kind of nature conservation project, whether it's a protected area, or it's a national park, or it's any kind of sustainable forest project. Anybody that is in that region, living there, working there, making a living from that resource need to be involved. And in addition to the environmental benefits that the project generates, we expect that there are co-benefits for the communities involved in these areas, and therefore there is support coming from the local communities. not only for the actions of the project, but also for the surrounding policy environment as well. We also, by bringing co-financing from the government and also from other partners involved, we solidify that coordination around the project objectives. Of course, it's not perfect because there are all kinds of risks involved in developing countries. There can be sudden political changes, instabilities, etc. And there's also this short-term thinking where financial gain is involved in many of our projects. But just being aware of that and building in these risk management measures into the projects helps address some of these barriers.
Good. Is a challenging question from participants, I guess, from Sweden, Jeppe Klockerson, that is a bit challenging, the concept that in Sweden there is a lot of wilderness. And so I don't know whether, Neil, you have been working in Sweden. Is it a way of is the forest industry on board in Sweden, in your view? First, do you agree with the statement that there is not enough?
Thanks, Jeppe.
For many of us, there is. But anyway, each one has his own point of view. And then what would be your answer to the second question?
Well, I can't make statements on behalf of Rewilding Europe, of course. But from my perspective, just from a local context, I think there's a lot more education that needs to be done on what biodiversity is, what a healthy environment is, what makes a forest, and biodiversity in that needs to be done. I think in Sweden there's a little bit of a misconception that there's a lot of biodiversity out there, or there's more biodiversity out there than there actually is. And that's possibly because you see quite a lot of big animals walking around when you're there. But the actual, when you look at the hierarchy that's in there from intact ecosystems, it's not fully functioning in a lot of areas, and of course that is to do with the forestry industry and the type of forestry that can be conducted in Sweden. So plantation forests are obviously not as biodiverse as naturally grown regenerated forests. So I think personally I'd like to see more natural regeneration of forests. I'd love to see all of the old growth forest that's still standing in Sweden totally, no more cutting of old growth forest. And I'd like to see more restoration projects. I mean, there's a huge amount of dams and blocked river systems still in Sweden that could be removed and have water systems restored. Peatland restoration, watershed restoration is ongoing in some places, but there's always room to do more. And I think, rather than always look at the negative, I think we have to look at the positive about all the great things that we could do if we want to change our model a little bit. So I don't want to be negative about this, but yes, change would be great.
Good. Thanks, Neil. You got support. Now, a question from Angela Nagy. How would you recommend smaller tourist businesses to participate in rewilding and in some other related project? Maybe, Stefano, you have some experience in your destination?
Yes, as a small destination, for sure, there's no way out. And so I think by going through the certification project, you need to do many participation, confrontation with the different stakeholders that you have in the territory. And we happen to work with people in charge of forestry, people in charge of taking the woods out of the forest, but also we're working on issue of rewilding and maintaining certain areas unspoiled so that we can guarantee the connection and these where for example all the birds are flying through, and we are taking also hosts and tourists with people, personal guide that will teach them what they are doing and why it's important to preserve the wildlife. So I think it's a good way of promote, even without loads of money. Is the other way around, is to have the involvement of tourists and local people to be the first one to give you the right advocacy of your destination. Because every year we have more destinations coming up everywhere in the world, but you need to find something of uniqueness that you can work on. And I think rewilding could be, if you have the opportunity of doing it, a good way of start promoting your destination in a different way.
Thank you. A question from Peter Rilfs is addressed to Neil, but I think it's a question that Yasemin can answer to him, maybe you. How does a landowner make sure to have enough money, income funding during the years the nature needs to get wild again? In your project, for example, probably there is an involvement of getting private lands in certain projects. How you or the implementers address that issue with the kind of subsidies and compensations? Do you find some resistance maybe from landowners that they want to maybe to have a palm oil cultivated there instead of having something more biological, correct?
Yes, very true. And that's what I was referring to before, in the involvement of the local community, which I think our colleagues also mentioned, where you have to compensate. If you're taking away something from a person or a group of people who are depending on these resources, you have to compensate in some way. And that's actually part of the design process in our project is, how are you going to do this compensation? Are these people going to be relocated, or are they going to be involved or retrained, or they make a new livelihood from the protected area, for example? So those are discussed with the local communities, agreed with the local governments, and the financing of that actually comes in as part of co-financing from the government or the local communities in a way that supports the whole project, and then the GEF decides to put in money after that. Those issues are resolved. So we would never fund a project, for example, which hasn't resolved these issues, because it doesn't make sense to go in knowing that you're going to be faced with local resistance, or people don't want this project, they're going to be fighting against it, there's no point in even going there. So at the very upstream, before the project is even conceptualized, these issues are put out on the table and sorted out at the local community level. And as after everybody is on board and all the issues have been addressed, that people are satisfied with what this project brings to them, and that's when we talked about co-benefits, what kind of benefits they're going to be getting from this project, and they're willing, they're on board, then we go in and we proceed with the financing of the project.
A last quick question, because we have 3 minutes, and I don't want to be the first one to break the time that has been respected so strictly today. It probably is more for you as well, Yasemin, is the involvement of the indigenous communities.
Yes.
In this project, I think is very important from different aspects. Are their tradition taken into account to do any restoration projects or rewilding projects? Do they actually perceive that they're being expropriated? I mean, it's a very complex issue, but we have a couple of minutes.
Yes, I mean, that's very context specific, but the bottom line is that indigenous people in areas where we work, if indigenous lands are concerned, they have to be on board and included and engaged in the projects. And the way we do it is, for example, I can give you the example of a project in Colombia, which is conserving of the marine protected areas there, is that we form these steering committees that would advise on how the project is designed and implemented, and indigenous people's representatives would have a role or a seat in that committee. And of course, and when you develop a sustainable tourism development plan or any kind of management plan for a protected area, they would be consulted, indigenous people's representatives would be consulted in the design of that plan, and specific roles would be given to the community, and of course, as I mentioned, co-benefits to the indigenous communities. We have to respect what the indigenous peoples who live in these lands prioritize and what they want out of the project, and also what is, important and sacred for them. And then the other element is that how we learn from the indigenous people's knowledge related to these areas, because they have lived and managed these lands for a very long time. They likely know a lot of things and much more than we do. So there needs to be a very clear knowledge exchange and learning happening, and a lot of the local heritage needs to be included in the design and management of these areas.
Great, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to all of you. I think it has been, in my view, a great participation from all of you. Many questions, unfortunately, we cannot address them all, but I understand that the question will be on records for either any bilateral discussion we have with the panelists, or somehow be taken elsewhere. A big thank you and a big applause to the three panelists, Stefano, Yasemin, and Neil.